Facebook, but I'm going to get that going now. So everyone who's joining on Facebook, just say hello in the comments, and then everyone who's in Zoom, you can say hello in the comments as well. Keep your mic on mute. I'm going to bring you in, or if you would like to come in later. So welcome. We're going to go into some things on the full moon today. It's already passed. It happened at 8:30, 8:34ish, and we're going to dive into just the present energy at this time. Specifically, I went through a technique yesterday on a video I posted, so if you haven't seen that, I'd recommend to go watch that after. But we'll dive into some of those elements, and really like kind of like what's opening up for everyone, and naturally we'll get into questions and roll from there. So yeah, so welcome everyone. Hey Anna, hey Anne in the Zoom, and then we got some people in the Facebook. So again, if you're in Facebook, just say hello in the comments. We're just going to share this in one of our other groups. If you're regularly here and you find value in these sessions, then please feel free to share this right off the bat so anyone in your network can also take advantage of this call. So yeah, just 1 minute here. We're just going to share this, kind of wait for the rest of the group to come in. Hey Lorraine, good to see you. Hey Lawrence, my friend. Alrighty, well let's just take a moment here then to just kind of tune in if you're not tuned in already, and that's simply just coming from a place of tuning into the heart. So whether the eyes are closed or eyes are open, actually that can be for the duration of what we're doing today. But the focal point of that center point in the chest is something in which we can just focus on for this moment. So there's no real interest in anything other than just this moment here. I mean, anything else that's going on in your life, or anything that's occurring, let's just leave that be for now. And as we come to the heart and just rest there just for a moment, I'd also like, if you desire, you can bring in the image of the sun. The big golden sun right in the center of the chest. You can place that in the focus point in your chest, and just feeling the intensity of that energy in the chest here. So if you're still coming in and joining us on Facebook, say hello in the chat, and then just jump into this meditation and intention setting with us. So focusing on the golden ray, the intensity, the energy of the sun right in the center of the chest. And then as we're doing that here, I'd also like you to bring forth the image of the moon and putting that right into the center of the sun, almost like it's an eclipse in a sense. But we're simply just merging these two energies. So you have the sun in the center of the chest as your focus here, and you're moving the moon in here as well. And we're just keeping that focus and attention on only this image. And this image also doesn't need to be there if that's not of interest to you. If we feel like we can just continue to come back to that pure place of balance and pure witness awareness, then you can rest there as well. And naturally, all we're doing is we're pointing to that space of no time, if you will, because there's two time cycles that occur. One is a lunar cycle, the other is a solar cycle. We're just merging the two of those right in the center of the chest, and you can even move that towards the back of the spine. Once again, the image of the sun or the moon is not as important as a connection with that pure place of awareness, in which is not so interested in stories or things that are arising. So just again with that focal point in the center of the chest, the sun and the moon kind of merged in that space. And from here, dissolving the image of the sun and the moon, or any other image per se that's arising. It's here you found the background, the vantage point in which is perceiving all, and from this space then we can slowly open the eyes and just bring the attention here. So everyone who's on Facebook, just let me know how the video is. Also, if you're here and you're just joining us, say hello. But we are streaming this in from Zoom, so I just want to make sure that everything looks good. It seems very good. And then everyone here who's in Zoom, welcome. Hey, Ivory. Should be some more people joining us in the Zoom call. If you do want to get into the Zoom call, you can join us actually through the Facebook if you want to ask questions face to face, that type of thing. I'll just put the link here. But throw in some feedback maybe on that meditation. It was fairly brief. We'll do it again in a little bit, potentially with some adjustments. That meditation actually comes from a doctor named Dr. Pillai, and it intuitively came to me as well quite a while ago, I believe, at least with utilizing either one of those images, the sun or the moon, in the visualization inwardly. And so as I mentioned, it's not so important necessarily as to the image of that, but what we're doing is we're moving and we're bringing together the balance of the lunar and the solar cycles. And this is how, in essence, this is how we stop time. And obviously the practical importance of stopping time is being willing and being able to reside in the now, reside in this present experience, which opens up for a remembering of what's naturally already available here, the sense of peace, the sense of abundance, your natural trust in the self, this type of perspective, right? So it's nothing far off. We're not getting, into some esoteric or anything like that. We're getting into the practicality of recognizing that the merging of the cycles of time into a balanced viewpoint brings you into that space of presence, that space of no mind, which is the ever-present creative creation and destruction energy. And from a potentially maybe a law of attraction perspective, because that's a very common concept, from that perspective, you're in a space of perpetual manifestation of what you need versus what you want or what you're looking to envision or really control. And so obviously the importance with that is coming into this full moon in Libra, which really has to do with that element of your needs versus your wants, right? And I say versus, but it's not really a great term. That's kind of like the English way in which we can get into it, but it's not really appropriate in the sense that anytime we're looking between two different things, there is an opportunity to rest in a certain sense of balance between those, rest in the gray area between those. And in essence, this is the space of the unknown, which that space of the unknown is, in reality, it's where the magic happens, because it's in that unknown space that we are naturally humble to life, and that results in a release of expectation, a release of projection, a release of many things that are again just concepts within mind. They're just ideas that we hold on to for as long as we need to, and then when we don't hold on to them any longer, then obviously we have passed that stage. So the reality of coming into this no mind space connects with multiple things. It connects with the presence of this moment, the now of this moment. It comes to humility. It emerges a principle of humility, and from that place, what naturally arises is in accordance with what is being listened to, what is being responded to with the environment that's around you, right? So many, obviously, initially in the empowerment element of seeking, there's an intensity of interest in wanting to not react to the environment, not react to people, not react to the world, all that. But then that breeds a certain sense of arrogance, in the sense that it's true, we are not to react to everything that's occurring, because that's just unconscious behavior, but we are to respond to what's arising. Because if truly life is, the pointer of a teaching saying that life is already perfect, or all is already what you desire, you are already enlightened, or all these different phrases and terms, this is practically applied through action and as a practice when one is willing to respond to everything that is arising in a space of surrendered action, in a space of deep willingness, deep humble willingness to meet the moment as it's meeting you. And this again comes back down to the conversation of needs versus wants, right? Which is, you could have a want in the sense of, what you want, what you desire for the fantasy of your life to be, or, what you would rather have, in replacement or in substitution to what this is, etc. And it's not to say that this is not useful, because having the vision of the want or the desire is also a very beautiful thing. But the clear recognition is that when we actually bring everything back down to the grounded space of now, the grounded space of here, there only can be a responding to the needs of this moment. And so what I found on my personal path is that, getting into the concepts of big spiritual topics and, visions of a new earth, a new world, a new reality, like all of these very kind of glamorous type of topics around, what we're speaking of here. Even the idea of full moon can get very glamorous, all of it. It creates this idealistic vision of life, which is a beautiful pointer, because it guides one into a perpetual mode of action that is what one knows that is to manifest. There's like an intuitive seeing, a psychic vision that one knows that you're creating this new world, and there's this new life, a transitional point that's happening in your personal world, but also in the collective. But at the same time, it also creates many very, very subtle blind spots. And so in my experience, it had created many blind spots that continuously were brought forth to humble again and again, and to really bring home the message that I'm really not special. As much as I am unique, I am not special. And this is, for you to take it or leave it, in the sense that there's nothing special about awakening. There's nothing special about fifth dimension. There's nothing special about a new reality. There's nothing special about enlightenment. None of these things are special, because the idea of special and the image in which the word or the essence of what special means, what it creates in the mind is a subtle layer of separation, a subtle layer of righteousness, a subtle layer of arrogance, pride, in which will continue to bring just more and more humbling lessons. And so of course this kind of all ties into, again, the needs versus wants, which for this moment, and you could all kind of be open in sharing here with me, so one thing to touch on briefly is something that's been important, at least in my space of bringing forth messages, is to at least have the message here as the most practical and grounded version of it. And so again, that comes back into the not creating specialness around everything. And the reason why that's important is because each individual, as much as we are living through our very unique paths, or say, what's more accurate is we're living through principles in which are all similar. So various techniques are going to apply to everybody in a certain sense. Some various techniques are really going to be able to apply to everybody in certain means. However, the same token, we all are living through different flows of energy, depending on our natal chart, depending on our natural tendencies, dependent on what has been created in this human experience. So although the divine essence of you, what you are as that pure sense of awareness, is always unbridled, untainted by the relative changes of human experience, the natal chart, astrology, all of this. At the same time, where one will continue to find themselves in a further place of ease and effortlessness is by being deeply tuned to their unique path, in which we could say in some sense is somewhat easier to be connected with when we are in that sense of isolation, or not caught up in all the social media and all the different images that are being shown to us in a perpetual light. And that requires a certain level of willingness to be in that alone space, to truly feel into what's residing for you, like what is deeply resonant for your current path. And And again, that comes from a certain sense of willingness and humility to actually be willing to actually acknowledge the needs versus the potential wants. And the wants generally are simply influences of others or society or images in which are presented that may not be resonant with the actual depth of your being and what truly is desiring to come forth. So so that initial piece, I'll just leave it there and let that sink. And maybe if there's specific questions or anything that we can get into, or any specific questions. There is a question here, so I'll dive into it. I mean, if there's further questions, we can go into. And then if you're here, just say hello. If I don't know that you're with us and I can't connect with your energy as easily. Okay, so a question here from Ivory. And so if anyone wants to ask a question on Zoom, like face-to-face in audio, then just let me know, because that'd be a great interactive piece that we can get into. But the question here is, do you have any phrases or things you do to come back or not get pursued by negative emotions, to not run away with such feelings, depressions, or loneliness, struggling to attach or to love these feelings? Struggling to not attach or to love these feelings. So really, I guess you're asking for affirmations or potentially a mantra. When it comes to affirmations, I mean, that's not something that I was into for that long. And I'll give you an image of two things. Firstly, language works in a very interesting way. So English, in many ways, is a weak language on the basis level. It's weak because it's very unnatural. The language is like Sanskrit, which is where most of the main Indian mantras come from. Sanskrit, Hebrew, some forms of Chinese, and Tibetan language. All of those are more vibrational, and they tune the DNA, they tune the brain, so they work with the neurological elements. And the workings, and they re-ingrain the mind. So when we're using a specific mantra, so say we're using the mantra, which is not really a mantra, it's more of a sound, but say we're utilizing the mantra, like when, and we're working that in the body. Firstly, when you do this, you can feel the intensity of the energy throughout. And when you do it for a prolonged period of time, say even if you just start with 10 minutes, firstly, and the starting A of the Om chant, A-U-M, is the manifestation. It's the creative force. So when you're utilizing the chant and you're really working with that, you're utilizing the creative force, you're utilizing the creative energy, and you're fixating your attention on that. So when it comes to emotions, firstly, we feel emotions generally in the sacral, in the bottom of the stomach, in the gut. And that's where also the creative energy, the creative force, the sexual energy resides. So when it comes to manifestation or moving creation forward, that happens in two ways. That happens through sex and emotions, and then happens through third eye perception, third eye projection, and visioning the reality how you desire to see it. So what this naturally means is that the third eye is the vantage point in which we're actually seeing the truth of physicality. So by perceiving from the third eye, naturally you're coming to that place of your most harmonious vibration. You call it the highest vibration, you call it whatever you want to really get into, but it's really coming to the reality. You're seeing through the illusions of just duality, which is the two eyes, and you're moving to the vantage point. So when you're utilizing the Ah chant, these are primarily going to be affecting those specific, I mean, it affects the entire energy system. But if you're focused on the movement of emotional energy, utilizing that chant works with that energy and it reformulates it, or it alchemizes it into something in which is more manageable. So that's a tool in which I would say we could use in this case. And I mean, there's many mantras, there's so many different types. But again, I mean, you can use English language, like I am powerful, or I am loved, or these types of things. But and remembering this is the purpose of a mantra or an affirmation. We're utilizing a mantra or affirmation to gain the focal point of attention. That's really all it's for. We're utilizing it to gain the focal point of attention. Because by way of focusing attention, then what is revealed is the essence of meditation, the essence of that no mind space in which one naturally will dissolve to as the mind is focused, right? As the mind is focused, we are able to manifest and move forward. If it's not focused, there's no moving because we're not sure what is to be revealed or what the direction is. So by utilizing mantra in any specific way, you're catalyzing focus. That's the initial reason why we utilize it. Now, the second piece is we generally don't need to affirm something in which we know. So this is the paradoxical space, is we utilize mantra or an affirmation to guide us into the focus and to guide us into the space of the feeling in which we're looking to ignite. So when we're saying, I am loved, I am loved, I am loved, I am loved, I mean, the words of that really don't have any juice to it necessarily. It could have some level, but it's really only in the conscious level that's doing anything. So it's not really supporting a real depth of transformation. It's opening the doorway. So when we use it, there has to be a space of willingness to look to find that love within yourself, to know that love within yourself, which comes from attention away from attachments and identities, which is why the affirmation is useful. But it's not the affirmation itself that's really doing so much, if you will. It's the practicing of what is behind that affirmation, or what the affirmation is pointing to. And this is a beautiful piece because, of course, we're not needing to affirm things that we know. It's like we know that we have hands, or we know that we have this physical body, so we don't need to keep affirming, I have hands, I have hands. Or when you meet someone, hey, I have hands, did you know I have hands? It's not something that needs to be done because it's known. And so when we find ourselves affirming things, naturally it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, is we're actually affirming that we don't know what it is that we're affirming. And this is an interesting paradox, because it also shows the nature of techniques, of modalities, and the limit in what techniques and modalities have is that they're only going to be another effect causing another effect. It's like using NLP or hypnosis or any of these different techniques. It's kind of like a constant band-aid. Sometimes they're better band-aids, more quality band-aids, or band-aids that have some aloe vera on it that also are doing some healing, but it's still effects on effects on effects. So we use them to continue to point to what's beyond, what's beyond, what's beyond, what's beyond. And that is the essence of self-inquiry, of being aware of only oneself, which initially is difficult, right? It's initially a difficult practice because, well, I'm aware of this pain right now, or I'm aware of this vision or this desire or this dream I have. I'm aware of that. I don't just want to be aware of this awareness. Well, that's boring. That's not interesting. But when we come to see that that's actually where everything resides, all the magic is actually held there, then transformation can occur. So I hope that answered your question, Ivory, for now. And if there's further stuff we can dive into, I know there's more questions here. And if there's any other questions, just keep them coming. Hi, can we touch on the nervous system and how a deregulated one can affect us being stuck? Yes, so, just like in a yogic system, when we utilize concentration to reveal meditation, well, there's also stages, below that as well. So, we get into the idea of sensation, the five senses. We get into the idea of the breath and the movement of the breath, and we get into the idea of the movement of the body, right? Getting into the movement of the body, and that is the various stages of yoga, including also the principles of how we treat people, etc. So let's focus on the breath, because breath is important from the standpoint that the only thing that connects the fifth element of ether or awareness or energy with the physical is the unseen element, which is breath. Breath is the only thing that connects the physical with the ethereal. And so breath is a very important tool to balance the lower with the higher, to recognize that it is the balance point. Breath is the balance between the lower and the higher. And it's not coming, this teaching is not coming from a place of we need to get all complex with our breathing. What the single most important element that is to be recognized when it comes to breath is that the body comes into a sense of balance when the depth of the cells of the body are being provided copious amounts of oxygen. So when the cells of the body are being filled with copious amounts of oxygen, then the body comes in balance. It's pretty much as simple as that. I mean, you need your sunlight, you need hydrated cells, which works in with the oxygen element too, and you need to be grounded, have the negative charge from the earth. So when it comes to the breath, like I said, it doesn't mean doing a bunch of breathing exercises. There's a couple elements to this, and I've been speaking more often about the fasting protocols, the mucusless diet system. We're going to be doing a call next Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern with Alexandra on that. And the beauty with the mucusless diet system and the idea of fasting is that we're releasing toxicity and mucus from the body, there's many layers to this. There's a lot of it for most people. And that mucus and that toxicity is basically blocking oxygen from getting to the cells and from cells actually being hydrated. So we can pound water all we want, but if there's a lot of toxicity and mucus that's built up and that's hardened in the body, then there's no water actually getting to the cells. And that's why we need to drink gallons of water a day, it seems, for many, to be hydrated. And you're not really even getting hydrated. So those two elements of hydration and oxygen only can actually happen when there's no mucus or toxicity in the body. So we can do all the breathing all we want, we can do all this the drinking all we want, but if the mucus is not released from, if we haven't done a certain level of detoxification, of fasting, and moving in the opposite extreme than many have gone with food in the other direction, then the idea of having a deregulated nervous system, an out of balance nervous system, all of the above, is just not going to be possible. And I mean, sure, there's anomalies and generalizations and all of that, but if we're getting into the principles of what we're speaking of here, then this is what we're getting into. So I didn't necessarily want to get into too much of the detoxing talk today. That's going to be next Sunday, as of right now, at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I'll link that actually right now, just so we have it, and you all can take advantage of this. But the basis of it all is that one has to be mucus free and release all of the toxicity in the body, which could take upwards of 9 months to a year, even longer, probably longer, if you go through the transition in a very methodical and not a blasting way. From that place, the cells can regenerate. They can release what they need to release. They can actually hydrate themselves. The body can be hydrated through the cellular water that's held in the deep tissue, and that is blocked from the toxicity. So the emotions that you're holding in these cells that are held within water are blocked, right? And that's blocked because there's mucus and toxicity, and mucus is nothing other than what you pick out of your nose or what's in your ears or what you see as pus forming on a scab or dead flesh. All of that is mucus and pus, which builds up in the body. And so for most people, it's been very extreme in one direction. So now there has to be an extreme in the other. There has to be a movement to fasting, a movement to raw focused diet and transitional a transitional time to that for at least a period of time so that the body can reset. With that, the various breathing exercises I've given, the spinal breathing often. There's many other techniques that I've provided, which, I mean, if you want clarification, we get into as well. But that's going to reset the nervous system. And that works into the emotional purification, which other tools like, I got liberation here, which I've been speaking about, that will help with various levels of emotional purification. The self-inquiry, there's many tools, but we're getting into like the most simple which is the fasting, the self-inquiry, and just the listening to one's intuition, the responding to the environment of life in a very easeful manner. Right, so I hope that answers that. Again, if there's further questions, let's just keep them rolling. This is the detox link. I'm going to get into something at the end of today's call in regards to how we're formulating all of this together to actually serve you and to be able to go through this step by step for those that are really wanting that support. And I'd like to actually bring on some people who've actually gone through some of these changes themselves. If you're on Zoom, maybe Ivory can talk, or Gary. These are initial changes that many people are experiencing, which in the body is going to be eternal. There's going to be an eternal unfolding of the body's expansion and its manifestation of what this body has the capacity, because it's infinite. So we can know our infinite nature and find the end point, the background, that pure place in which cannot be defined. That is to be known. From that place, the body then goes through its manifestation. It goes through its eternal understanding and unfolding, which brings us a sense of humility, a deep sense of humility. Right? Because if you're in a body, which all of you are, then there has to be a humility to the higher order. There has to be a humility to the grand picture, because you're in a body. You are governed by those laws that an ethereal one who is not existing in a body is not. So it's just an important point to recognize. So if you're finding value from this, feel free to share this video. Thanks, Lorraine, for sharing earlier. Hopefully you're still here. And so, yeah, if you want to dive into any further questions, we can get into. I'm going to get into a little bit more on this full moon energy and just some kind of techniques you can apply, right now. So hopefully that answers your question too, Sarah. Just let me know if you want further clarification. But the simplicity will always be what it is. Now, what's a beautiful piece is that although it's simple, it is difficult, and simplicity comes in various forms. So what I'm saying is not absolute, like when it comes to specific modalities and techniques and things. At the same time, if you have faith and trust in what the message is here, then there has to be a willingness to face the resistance that's initially presented when one finds themselves in a technique or modality or teaching that is very simple and direct and to the point and practical, because that will always come together. And there has to be a willingness to practice. There has to be a willingness to go into the fasting. There has to be a willingness to, spend time in handling what you need to handle in your current space of life, rather than what you want to or what you feel like is what you, in the image of your mind, what you'd rather be doing when there's needs that are to be taken care of. And again, that continues to reiterate the message that nothing that's being spoken here is glamorous or special or for the elect few or this very special time we're in, and these various things we hear in the new agey type of culture. Which, yes, we are in the time of all times. We are in a space in which you are being given the secrets of all secrets. These teachings usually in the past have been held in the secret chambers of the mystery schools, of the caves of Tibet, of the Himalayan, yogis. It has been these are the advanced teachings, but you can see that there's nothing really to that. Like, if you have the ears and heart to hear it, then there's a readiness and a willingness to be able to even consider the message and what can be practiced. So there's a simultaneous nature to it where, yeah, you may have this new knowledge and you may want to, tell your friends about it, or you may want to share it, you want to go that stuff. But there has to be a consistent humbling that nothing about what you're saying is this special, grand thing. And the more in which you're willing to see that and come to that and, kind of get on your knees to life, to the guru, to the essence of the guru, the energy of what the guru represents, which is the source, the one, the single teacher, then you'll be rewarded. You'll be rewarded with all of the glamour in which you have in the mind, but it won't be in the mind any longer. It'll be flowing through you. And in the real-time experience, that maybe the most important element to that is the ability for that to now be shared amongst those who are around. Because specialness creates exclusivity. Specialness creates cult-like energy. Specialness creates dogma. And this is what I've been keen within, lately to really, kind of feel into what that represents. And I'm going to get into that in a moment, but there's a couple questions here. That is down to earth practical advice. Deal with what is relevant in your current situation, then you can move to higher realms. Well, and also what's a vital piece is that what your current situation is the higher realms. Because if everything is a fractal of the whole, if everything is a fractal of the source, then what that means is the most practical, mundane, basic element of your experience is also the highest of the high. It is multidimensional in the space that as you act in this specific situation that may be mundane or this and that, you are rippling out into the higher experiences. You are simultaneously experiencing the multidimensional, higher dimensional essence of self, in which then will, as you're humble enough to see that, will give you access to, yes, the higher powers and the psychic abilities and all the different things. But that's not coming from this pride-like, fantasy. It's coming from how is this going to be practically used in each moment to be of service to the environment, to be of service to the whole. So there is, again, a simultaneity to everything. It's not either or, it's both. Right? So that's a really beautiful point, Andrew. Any tips for keeping sattva when surrounded by rajas or tamas, missing the ashram environment? So for someone that doesn't know what sattva, rajas, or tamas is, these are the types of energies, right? So sattva is kind of like the balanced space, and then rajas and tamas are like the intense energy, fire-like, intensity, and then the more dull, like kind of like brain fogged. And it has nothing to do necessarily with anything other than the reality is always desiring to come back to sattva or balance. It's always looking to harmonize itself, and it will always be presented with contrast, which is rajas, tamas, or just imbalanced energy. So the teaching doesn't change. It's always the same thing. It's a recognition that one has to be only focused on what is appearing and what's occurring here, which is occurring here. When I say this, what I'm pointing to is the response and the perception to how one is living. What is the response in the ever-present moment of just action? Because the reality is there's not really an inner or an outer. Everything, we could say everything is inter or everything is outer. Of course, there's a reality. Okay, there's a body and there's this inner thing, and then there's these outside appearances. But everything that is appearing in the outer world is happening in here. And as one continues to inquire, they recognize that there's no end to the depth of where that is actually happening. There's no singular place in which that is happening. So inner and outer don't really apply so much there. It's more about how am I continuing to surrender to that place in which constantly is seeing perfection and then is surrendering to action in which aligns with that perfection. That's where the teaching is complete. It's not, oh, life is perfect, but then there's happenings that there's clearly resistance to. You see? So then it's not perfect. It's not being seen as perfect. So if it is perfect truly, then one is willing to surrender to the action in which will align with that perfection. So this is a different, way of looking at that. Okay, so I hope that I hope that's clear. Okay, so if there's further questions, let's dive in and I would pose a question to all of you, and just as a consideration and something to inquire here. It was something that I was posing to myself deeply, and it's been more and more prevalent in the sense that as you continue to tune into the natural self, there's a deep, obvious nature as to how you're feeling. So I don't know, maybe everyone's having a party one night, and you're just not really feeling in the mood. It's not really feeling resonant. It's not an emotional space, like I just don't want to go to the party. It's a space of a deep contentment to the space in which you're presently in, which may not naturally call for the party to occur. So as one relieves the attention of the want, let's say, so the want being either I want to go to the party or I don't want to go to the party, because they're both wants. So I want to go to the party or I don't want to go to the party. They're both wants. So the focus is not at all on the party, because that's a want. What the image of the future will always be a want. So the need is always of what's presently available here. So the need initially is just to rest the attention in one's present awareness, in the present space, in which unveils naturally the unfolding of natural action. So as one continues to tune in here, they may feel the natural movement to get up and go take a bath, or the natural movement to get up and look at the sun, or the natural movement to continue in the meditation, or continue in the space. So we see that as one dials it back to what's here, there's a natural seeing of what's to arise, and that's what's needed, because one's in a natural responding to the need of the moment, not the want of the future, not the want of the vision, not the want of the fantasy, which in this case is just as simple as the party that's happening in the evening. So that is a space in which needs practice, because that can get very impractical, where one is constantly not able to make any plans or not able to do anything, and it's not having anything to do with that. It's having to do with the tuning into what's here, because maybe what spontaneously arises is a call to the friend to say, yes, I'm going to attend the party. But this is the simplicity of the practice when it comes to your needs versus what's your wants. It's releasing from the intensity of the egotistic fantasy and vision of what one believes that they are to be or to become, or what their destiny is, and all of that, and to rest in what's presently available. And that presence and that availability will naturally unfold specific action, specific arising, a specific spontaneous arising of a happening, a scenario, an occurrence. You see, so in essence, this is the entirety of what we're speaking of when it comes to this full moon topic. Is we're speaking of this space of recognition, of presence, of here-ness, and an uninteresting attention in everything else that wants, your focus, wants your energy. So tell me if that is clear for you, and if this is something that can be practiced. And so there's a comment here, yes, would love to dwell in the space during the day instead of the to-do list, setting an intention now to return to the presence this week. Yes, so, as I mentioned, it's always a simultaneity. So we can have the to-do list, and we can have the focus on intention. So the balance is, maybe the to-do list doesn't need to be as long. Maybe the to-do list doesn't need to have these big picture things. It can be very simple, very small. Because the reason why, at least in my personal experience, if the thing on my to-do list was too large and not broken down into the basics of the basic steps, the basic decisions that are to be made, well, then there's going to be an energy drain in looking to figure that out later, to try and understand this big picture item, when really that's not even possible. You can't take action on, I'm going to build a business today, or take action on, I'm going to I don't know, we understand what we're speaking of, right? And I'm sure we can all find examples. You just answered my question before I had a chance to ask. There you go. So that that with the meditation that we started with today, which was the sun and the moon in the center of the heart, these all continue to reside into a perpetual tuning into what you're presently here with, what's available, taking inventory, what is to be responded to, and as that happens, then what continues to occur is a dwindling of delay, a dwindling of delay of response. And it's not to say that we are not to wait in specific times, but we are energetic beings in which are in constant motion, constant flow. So wait, if that has anything to do with stagnation, or feels like stagnation, then that's not the wait we're speaking of. Because sure, things take time, but as things are taking time, there's further things in which will require our attention. So it may take time to reach a bigger goal that one has, but what's still required is to get up and, take a shower, or brush your teeth, or, call your friend that called you yesterday, or what have you. You see? so what is to be taken from this is again that simultaneity. If you didn't watch my video on humility yesterday, go watch that after this. And it simply just gives one a perpetual tool to be reminded that contrast is always going to be apparent. One who has an illusion of seeking is one who only wants the one side, only wants bliss states. And that's just, there's always opposites, there's always appearances of opposites. So if there's a willingness to see all the opposites, then that's where fearlessness emerges. Because if one is seeing all opposites, then, well, one is aware. And the darkness is unveiled because one's aware, one sees all opposites and is willing to see all opposites and not only attached to one perspective out of an infinite potential of perspectives. I'm noticing I'm using my hands a lot today. It's interesting. Because I get the delayed reaction on the Facebook from Zoom. That's funny. So I would like to get into a specific kind of call to action for all of you that I've been speaking about for a little bit of time. I'm going to get into that in a moment, which is going to be important. So if you're still here, rest here. However, I'll still open it for further questions. We can get into this last 10 minutes or so. And as well, if anyone's on Zoom and wants to speak with your face on the camera, it'd be great to hear about your present space of applying what's being spoken here and how that's affecting your experience in a short form, a couple minutes maybe, or keep it as balanced as you can. Or if there's questions and you'd like to speak on camera too, that'd be cool. I'd like to open that up further on the Zoom calls moving forward at least. So say so in the comments if you want to. And then for everyone on Facebook, you can ask your questions. And again, if you're finding value, please share this video. And it's always great to share it with a comment. That's certainly when people will read things. You just press the share button, it just shares, and it doesn't have any context. You have to share why you're sharing this. Why are you posting this? What is the reason? Okay, well, if there's questions that arise, then I'll dive in. But I will dive into just this kind of present time with what I've been speaking of when it came to, well, two things. What I found is interesting is, so for our Heart-Centered Leader program, we use terms like Heart-Centered Leader. We use terms like, this new transition we're in, these new times that we're in, the space of a real transformation that many are walking. All of you on this call are walking. In the same light, these terms like heart-centered leader and advanced teachers and facilitators and all of this, the importance with all of it is that there's a recognition that these words don't really mean anything. They point to things, but they get caught up in any sort of glamorous nature with what's being presented. So when it comes to utilizing it as a tool to communicate to you what this program is really about, the types of people that are coming together. So it is by application basis, or if you're a client of mine that I've been working for some time, that will be open. And the sharing of what's coming forth within the platform when it comes to my specific, approaches, the emotional purification and really moving into a space of alchemizing emotion. When it comes to the mucusless diet system that, Alexandra brings in, the Rasa transmission, utilizing tools like liberation and how to get the most out of it, how to work with it. All of these teachings, and maybe in most specific light to many of you, is how is flowing to a creative means of service in your life. This doesn't mean being a facilitator, being a healer, being any of that in the way it's typically defined. It means a willingness to live this reality that you're experiencing, which means embodying it into your day-to-day experience so that it transcends into your family network, into your community, into the creations you're bringing forth, your vocation, all of that. And how does one specifically move through that? That's the importance of this program, what's being presented. So, I've been seeing, there's a lot of other teachers doing this at this time. And I have felt recently, I was like, okay, well, is this really authentic to what it is that I'm speaking this time? Is this really what makes sense to me and how this is to be approached? And on one level, of course, it makes a lot of sense. And on another level, there's an interest in my space to keep it as simple as possible, which means how does this reach as many people as it can? How do we keep it applicable to the present basic day-to-day nature that doesn't get lofty, doesn't get into some grand fifth dimensional vision of everything, keeps it into what is presently available for each person. And that's really the intention that I'm bringing forth with what we're doing here, is not to overcomplexify anything, to make it accessible. So sure, there's a certain charge and fee for it that certain people may not be able to afford. But in the same light, how can it still be accessible to those people? How can you still be walking this path in a space in which you can apply the tools in which you need to potentially then be able to join into the more intimate focus? Because all of it is an exchange of energy. What's being shared in the group is not necessarily anything different than what people access in the free teachings on all of the posts that I've made, that you can find copious amounts of information that some people are charging millions of dollars for, especially in the life coaching type of industry. But really, the reality is that the only thing that's actually necessary for those who already have this knowledge is the application, the accountability, the connection in community, and the creativity that arises within that community. That is what I feel is really the juice of why we're bringing this group together. So, it's really a call to action for each of you, for those that are really feeling called to be in that space and to feel more of that. I wouldn't say a push, because it's not a push, but to recognize the nature of the investment of time that I will give to each of you that are really connected in, and the time that you're also going to give in to be able to really make the changes in your experience and create what it is that you really are here to create. That's really what it comes down to. But in the same light, the free content, the stuff that I put on Facebook, all of that will still constantly be coming forth for anyone that's not in that. But I would say that, there's a certain power in commitment. There's a certain power in investing time and energy and money into a program of this one, or any other teacher that they're offering, or any other thing that you're going into, if the energy is coming from that right place. So there has to be a willingness for commitment, a willingness for effort, a willingness for application. Because it's great to get on these calls and hear all these messages and then not apply a thing, or to read a bunch of blog posts, or just to get filled up with information and not really move into a practicality with any of it. And so that's what I feel is really the importance with this group and what we're kind of moving forward with. So that's going to be starting very shortly in April, and it will be ongoing, so people will have to join, But this initial group, I'd like, to get together over this next 2 weeks. So that's why I'm having these one-on-one meetings with people, so that you can schedule with me. I'll put the link. But it's something that's been funny in my space, as I've been just seeing. Even in my own being, a space of, just glamorization around the words and terminology around, heart-centered leader, or, advancement and transformation, all of this. And it's great to utilize higher forms of language. But if it's not coming from the right place, or if it's coming from a place of utilizing that language as a replacement for the advancement itself, right? Because many times the more advanced all of the lingo and all the conversation is around something, then there has to be an inquiry as to why that's being used. Why is it so so much there? And I'm not here to name names about other teachers. I can only speak for my own space. So just wanted to be open about that. with all of you. I'm just going to share the link to schedule. I don't know what we'll call it. I wouldn't call it an interview for this program, but just connection. And then we'll see if that's a match in your space. I'm going to see there's some comments in the Zoom call. Yeah, so Ivory has some good points there. So I mean, yeah, you're hearing me out. Everyone's still here, so that's great. If there's further questions on anything, then link with me. I'm doing the pay what you feel connections at the moment because I mean, as much as these are connections to talk about, this potential program, really we can get into the depth of your experience now. It's very quick. It's not fast. It's not slow. It's not. It doesn't take so long as process. We can get into the depth of any obstacle that you're facing in this present space. Quite frankly, almost instantaneously, and we can work through that there. So for now, until probably next week, I'll be doing pay what you feel for these sessions. I've been enjoying it. It's a beauty of exchange, and we'll just leave it there. If there's again any further questions, then throw it up. And again on Zoom, if there's anything that you want to come on, everyone's so quiet on Zoom. It's not going to be quiet through these calls and these group calls. I don't want people to interact. Actually, I don't really care, to be honest. You don't need to interact. Sometimes it's nice, sometimes it's not. So if there's questions, flow them through, but we're just going to jump into just a closing intention here. Yes, thanks Anna for being here. It's great to have you as always. Your energy is felt. And so let's just bring the attention here. You can close the eyes if you like. The attention can come into the heart. And if you'd like to bring in the vision again of the sun and the moon together, again, the intention of this and the purpose of this is to balance in the 0 point of time, the lunar cycle and the solar cycle. So you're doing this as the creator. You are the focal point. You are that source perception. So you're bringing together the time frame, the time experiences of your present space. And just abiding in that space and that truth here. And if you need to dissolve that picture in the mind, you can, but the focal point, the focus is simply a resolution of the imbalance, of bringing forth of that center point of balance, of what's available for you here, what's present for you here. So I will look to kind of close here in this space, so you can remain in this meditation if you like, kind of soak it up. If you're coming in, late, or you came in after the fact, I'd recommend to rewatch what we went through tonight or today. In regards to your question, Sarah, this was the 11:30 Zoom. Maybe I assume you're in Central Time, maybe. So this was Eastern time. I hope I was I mentioned that on the Zoom call. Maybe I didn't. I think I did though. But that's okay. You're here in some form. So blessings to all of you. Enjoy your, the energy of this moon. For those of you that had inquired about the liberation, that's being shipped out. We're shipping out them quite often, so that'll be shipped out for the rest of you quite soon. And then yes, everyone's schedule with me. I'd love to connect with all of you. I'm in a space of openness in that space, so it'd be great to do that. So much love. Enjoy your day, and we'll connect soon.